I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm already experiencing the tech glitches and just things that sort of go wrong with Mercury retrograde because we are already in the shadow period of the Mercury retrograde that's happening on Wednesday, December 13th is the day that Mercury is going retrograde. And so this episode isn't about Mercury retrograde. That was just on my mind, but it's about the December 2023 outlook. So our final month of 2023, we have a good amount of astrological shifts happening this month, one of them being the Mercury retrograde, but really kind of all eyes this month are on Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter. And this episode is going to serve to tell you everything about what that means and how it applies to your life in a practical sense, because that's kind of what we do around here. Welcome to the Yogi Scopes podcast. If you are new here, if you are not new, then welcome back. Either way, I'm your host, Rosemary Holbrook. I am a Vedic sidereal astrologer and a yoga teacher, now practicing as a yoga therapist. It's been this slow unfolding. It's hard to title myself. I want to say I'm just a yoga therapist, but I'm not actually done with the certification yet. So that would be dishonest, I suppose, to just start calling myself a yoga therapist. I am in the practicum portion. If you're familiar with what a yoga therapy certification entails, you have to see a certain number of hours. It's a lot of hours. It's about 6 months worth of seeing clients to become a yoga therapist. And I'm doing that now. And so I go off on that tangent because those of you that signed up in the Yogi Scopes membership before it closed on November 17th have access to 6 sessions of yoga therapy with me while I am working through my practicum. So you've already received an email about that. If you haven't responded, this is your reminder to respond. And that I just go on that tangent also to kind of qualify what I do here with Yogi Scopes. The whole point, I guess, is not just learning astrology just to do it. I suspect if you're here that you have always maybe been fascinated with astrology. Maybe that has taken you to varying degrees of buying books or apps or whatever to study astrology. It doesn't really matter your existing level of knowledge, but I just find that a lot of stuff out there, especially on Vedic astrology, but astrology in general, gets very cerebral and heady and really in the weeds of what the astrology system is, and with less practical applications. So that's why here on the Yogi Scopes podcast, I use my little yoga therapist knowledge that I have after having been working on this certification since late 2019. So it's been 4 years now in the making. And so I've learned a lot in that time. And it has to do with how to apply the wisdom of yoga philosophy to your life in a meaningful way, and not just knowing the philosophy to be super the best one at the dogma, right? But to make meaningful change and to be a kinder person. So that's what we're here for. Welcome to the Yogi Scopes podcast. If you're new, or if you're not new, welcome back. And I always mention that we use the sidereal zodiac here. I was just interviewed on another podcast. My good friend Amber Brown, she was on the Science of Light. So if you've been around, you might have heard her episode over on the Science of Light. If not, go listen to it. It's a great one about the movements of Venus. That's a really good episode. But she just interviewed me on her fairly new podcast called the Astro Coaching Podcast. So I highly recommend to go check that out and listen to the interview, because it was all about kind of the differences between Western and Vedic astrology, and just more about that. So it's fun. It's a fun conversation. It's a good listen. Little plug for that. Normally I give a little spiel, but now I have more resources I can point you to. And so, Amber's podcast is delightful already. It's fairly new, and I'm super excited for it and for her. So let's dive into what's happening in December. I actually have 2 more housekeeping announcements before we dive into what's happening in December. So the first one is I don't know if, I know not all of you use Spotify, and hang with me if you don't use Spotify to listen to podcasts, because I have I don't want to punish you for not being a Spotify user. But if you do use Spotify for your podcast, and especially to listen to this podcast, and you just got your little Spotify Wrapped, it's super fun. I love it. My top podcast for the year was a podcast called Fun Fables, because we put it on Alexa in my 4-year-old's room for him to go to sleep. He listens to these bedtime stories. They're super hilarious. And apparently, because we let him fall asleep listening to it, we listened to like 16,000 minutes of Fun Fables this year. So that was my top podcast of the year. But if Yogi Scopes was your top podcast of the year on your Spotify Wrapped, I want you to send it to me, and I have a gift for you. And I'll tell you the gift in a second, because I'm going to extend the same gift to people that use Apple Podcasts in a different way. So there's no Wrapped on Apple Podcasts, because I guess Apple is a bunch of sticks in the mud. I don't know. They don't like to have fun. I'm just kidding. But if you use Apple Podcasts, if you could write me a review, not just put the 5 stars, but actually write something. Okay, so this is a multi-step process. You have to put the stars, or however many stars you think I deserve, I don't know, and write the review, write something, and then take a screenshot once it is posted and email that to me, and I will send you the same gift that I'm extending to folks that share, if I made it into your Spotify Wrapped. But you can also, so anybody, write a review, but the main place I'm looking is Apple Podcasts, or share your Spotify Wrapped, tag me on social media with the Spotify Wrapped or with the review, either way. And I will send you a 2024 Yogi Scopes Planner. It is a physical copybook. This leads us well into our other housekeeping announcement that's so exciting. If you've been around for a while, you know I've been making the Yogi Scopes Planner as a PDF for a few years now. And it's more than just a calendar. It's not just a list of astrological dates in like list format or even in calendar format. It's more than that. That's why it's a planner. It's not a calendar. And it is now a physical book. If you're watching this on YouTube, I have one in my hands right now. If you're on the podcast, you're not going to see it. But I posted on Instagram the other day. And this is just the monthly version I have in my hands right now. So it's quite thin. The monthly version is like 50 something pages, like 55 pages, I think, or 56 maybe. And the weekly version, that is a physical book that you can buy by going to yogiscopes.com/2024, is like 160 something pages. So it's quite thicker than the one that I was just showing on screen. But it has not just it does have all of the astrological dates in list format and tables towards the front so that you can just quickly reference things. But then it also has monthly pages throughout the year that have the dates, the things happening that month, a place for you to just write out your regular monthly, like whatever. And then it also has weekly pages with a place for you to set an intention for each day of the week. It has the transits for that week, plus my interpretation of the themes, plus a place for you to write how that lands in your life so you can keep track of it in one place. And then it has a place to just plan your regular life week. So it's a planner. It's not just a calendar. It's a planner. And so if you want one, if you're currently in the membership, y'all have already received an email from me that I am sending you one of the weekly. A couple of you elected for a monthly instead, and so that's fine. But everybody else, I'm sending a weekly. If you're already in the membership is currently closed for enrollment, but I'll reopen it soon. And so that brings us to our other housekeeping announcement, is that I had planned the yearly planning workshop to be on Sunday, December 10th, because that's right by the new moon in December, and that's just a good time. We'll talk about it in a second. And I'm making the sort of sad decision, I suppose, to postpone it. And that was a tough decision, but it came from the fact that I want y'all to have the physical planners in your hands. And that is only a week from now, basically. And it's cutting it too close for comfort for me. And so, getting this physical planner out into the world is pretty much a dream come true for me. And I know for several of you have been waiting on me to make this, or somebody. to make this. And so it's out there, but shipping at this time of year, we're not going to gamble on it. So we're just going to push the yearly planning event back, and I will send out in an email the official date and time and your chance to sign up. So with that, let's talk about the astrology of December, because that actually has to do with, that's like why obviously I pick all of my workshops and like things that I offer are highly, highly based on the astrology. So that's why I was like, it makes sense to do this planning for the new year around this new moon that's happening in Scorpio, in sidereal Scorpio in December. So just to make it more clear, I suppose, let's talk about what's happening in December. So as always with these monthly Outlook episodes, I just give you a run through of the dates of what's happening, and with always the caveat that if you want them written down, that's why you get the planner, so that maybe one day I can stop just rattling this off, but I probably won't. So the first thing happening this month is not until next Wednesday, December 6th, which is Neptune is going direct in Pisces. And that will factor into, of course, I always go over the overall energies, what it's a good month for, a bad month for, and yoga practices and journal prompts. But I just want to make a note right now while we're talking about that remember that Rahu just moved to Pisces about a month ago. So that Pisces energy is high. We'll talk more about what that means when we get to the overall energies section. Then right after that, the next thing happening is Tuesday, December 12th is our new moon in Scorpio. And then Wednesday, December 13th, Mercury is going retrograde in Sagittarius, and we will have a Mercury retrograde meditation challenge in the membership. I don't know, haven't decided if I'm going to offer it for individual sign up again or not. I might. More about that on the Mercury retrograde special episode when it comes out, because I will do an episode just about the Mercury retrograde itself, and also about the new moon, of course. The next thing that's happening is on Saturday, December 16th, the sun enters Sagittarius, which is always a point of difference, I suppose, when you're out there on the internet and you're hearing, oh, Sagittarius season. According to Western astrology and everybody on the internet, around December 16th, we'll be almost in Capricorn season, according to them. But just try it on for size, see how you feel, see if the last couple weeks of December really feel like a time to be getting your shit together like Capricorn season, or a time of extravagance and partying and adventure like Sagittarius season. So just see how it feels in your life is all I'm going to say about that. And then on Sunday, December 24th, Venus enters Scorpio, and I have some things to say about that in a moment, because I'll just get there. Venus in Scorpio is, because of Venus's retrograde earlier this year, this is a little bit of a different energy than we normally have at this time of year. So I'll say more about it in a second. It's not a bad thing, I don't think, as long as you're prepared and which is why you're here listening to an astrology podcast. And then on Tuesday, December 26th, there is a full moon in Gemini. So I just want to point out the new and full moons this month are ruled by Mars and Mercury respectively. Okay, so just make a mental note of that. And then Thursday, December 28th, Mercury retrogrades into Scorpio. And then on Saturday, December 30th, Jupiter goes direct in Aries, which is ruled by Mars. And Monday, January 1st, Mercury goes direct in Scorpio, which is New Year's. On New Year's Day, Mercury goes direct. A couple days before, we'll have Jupiter going direct. So I just want to point out first about all those dates. If you're like listening while you're driving or doing dishes or working or whatever, maybe it didn't paint this picture in your brain. But I don't know if you noticed that there was only like a couple things happening in the early part of the month, like the first 3 quarters of the month. And then between Tuesday, December 26th and Monday, January 1st, I know that's January, but it counts. Right. Okay. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things happening. No, 6 things happening right there in that last week of December. And there's only 4 things happening in the first 3 weeks of the month. So just keep that in mind as you sort of think about how December might play out in your life. And so as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, all eyes are on Mars, Jupiter, and Mercury this month. So let's talk about what that means. Because as I mentioned, the new moon is in a Mars-ruled sign, Scorpio. The full moon this month is in a Mercury-ruled sign, Gemini, at the end of the month. And at the same time, we have Mercury going retrograde for like half of the month. And we have Jupiter is still retrograding in Aries, which is another Mercury-ruled sign. And so most of the other major shifts we have going on this month are switching from Mars-ruled Scorpio to Jupiter-ruled Sagittarius. So let's talk about what that means, right? Because if I just say those planets, they might not evoke an embodied sense of meaning in your brain and in your body and in your life. But that's what we're going for over time with this study is like when I say those things that it like means something to you, but it's not a prerequisite, right? So Mercury is all about the nervous system, the communication. Mercury is like, it's not the message or the content of the communication. It's like the path. So for example, with travel, which might be on the mind this month with especially all this Sagittarius energy, with travel, Mercury retrograde is responsible for like delays, traffic jams, flight delays, things like that, things just getting messed up. And so this is the thing. It's like you will probably still get where you're going, or like with Mercury retrograde, for example, the message will still get across I if there's a typo, even if there's a delay, right? So that's kind of the idea with Mercury. So I hope that helps paint a picture of like what Mercury represents. It's the nervous system. It's like, the nervous system is like the information highway of your body, right? If that makes sense. And then so Mercury also represents the highways and the, does that make sense? Where it's not like Mercury isn't like the point you're trying to make in your email. It's like the email itself. I hope that makes sense. And then so Mars, and that'll hopefully make more sense in a moment. Mars is the warrior planet. And so Mars is all about action and motivation and drive and getting things done. And with that can also be a little bit fiery, a little bit maybe arrogant, a little bit less compassionate. But Mars can also bring a very passionate energy. And if done correctly, that passion can become passionate. If you're not careful, it can lack compassion. So that's one of the things actually I have on the list for things to watch out for this month. And then Jupiter is known as Guru in Sanskrit. And so it's all about what does a guru do, but supposed to expand your horizons, right? Through spiritual teachings, through philosophy, through, being generous and giving. And so those are kind of the three most heightened energies this month. And that is by way of Neptune is going in direct in Pisces, which is a Jupiter-ruled sign. And everything else this month is happening either in Scorpio, which is a Mars-ruled sign, Aries, another Mars-ruled sign, or Gemini, which is Mercury-ruled, and Mercury's going retrograde in a Jupiter and then Mars ruled signs, right? So does that make sense how all those three energies are like the biggest energies of the month? So let's talk about what that means in a more practical sense, like how beyond just the planets that are being activated, what it all sort of plays together to mean. So the main overall energy, I would say, of this month is doing the deep inner work and reflection to expand in the direction of your Dharma. And so another main theme that's going to come with that is examining how your emotions, which is very Scorpio, and your nervous system, and how able you are, which is Mercury, right? How able you are to regulate your emotions' impact on your nervous system and the effect that that then has on your behavior, which is like Mars, right? So I hope you're following. I'm going to keep talking and hopefully it makes more sense as I go. So when Neptune goes direct, it will bring an energy of illusions and deceptions being dispelled, because Neptune and Pisces both have this like Delulu energy, which I talked a lot about on the Rahu moving to Pisces episode, which I actually just learned from my Spotify for Podcasters Wrapped, my version that I have for being a podcaster. I also have one for just my Spotify account that I listen. Anyway, I learned that episode was a big one for a lot of people found this podcast via that episode. So welcome if that's where you started your journey with Yogi Scopes. And whether or not it was, no matter how long you've been here, I do recommend revisiting that periodically or as often as possible. And so when things get activated, like Neptune going direct in Pisces where Rahu is, it might be good to revisit what that means, right? And that episode's a good place to do that. So is the sign by sign that exists in your membership portal if you're in there. So, that energy, Neptune going direct in Pisces, allows for greater spiritual and emotional clarity, which is a good thing, right? Neptune being retrograde might have made those things a little bit clouded over the last several months since Neptune has been retrograde there. And that also deepens the connection to spiritual practices, especially with Rahu being there, and also maybe bringing increased interest in exploring the subconscious mind. And so that's by way of Pisces being activated in this way, this shift of energy around Pisces, which is Jupiter ruled, and what we have going on meanwhile with the sign of Scorpio, which is, so Pisces is more about subconscious spirituality. Scorpio is more about emotions and, like how your emotions drive your behavior, right? So, those things are both highly activated this month. And then it's also a time for, so with that new clarity and vision that you might be experiencing when, Neptune goes direct, it's a good time for optimistic goal setting because of, especially, once the Sagittarius energy gets kind of heightened, it will be a good time to, set your goals for how you're going to expand your horizons and move towards that vision and lean into this philosophical, just, indulgent, and extravagant energy that Sagittarius brings. And so that's, like I was mentioning with the Venus and Scorpio thing, the holiday season, here we are in December, most of the major world religions, right, celebrate some kind of extravagant holiday in December. Like there's Yule, there's Christmas, there's Hanukkah, there's, you know what I mean? And a lot of it, the theme is about keeping that light alive in this time of darkness, at least especially here in the Northern Hemisphere. And so, that whole like Christmas giving or whatever holiday spirit thing, that's so Sagittarius. And so I just want to point that out to hopefully, even if you're not like Christian or celebrate Christmas, or because I'm not, but I celebrate Christmas, even though I'm not Christian, I look at it more of like a solstice or Yule kind of, getting back to those pagan roots, I suppose, of lighting a Christmas tree to keep the lights alive, even when it's dark outside. Right. And it just makes me happy. It's very extravagant, right? Like having a Christmas tree and this whole like holiday giving spirit, that's so Sagittarius. And so I just hope that even if you don't celebrate those things, that making the connection between that collective energy that we experience in December often is so Sagittarius. Like that's a good embodied understanding of what Sagittarius energy is like. And, so with that, especially with Mars moving into Sagittarius later in the month. So, which means Mars will have been in Scorpio for the majority of the month, which is the sign that it rules. So that's fine. That's not a bad thing. But so for briefly there, Mars and Venus will be together in Scorpio right around the time you might be home for the holidays, especially if you're in the US, because it's December 24th, Venus moves into Scorpio. And it's not until I think, what is it, the 28th? What did I say? Or I don't keep, these dates don't live in my head. When 27th, which is a Wednesday. It's the Wednesday after Christmas, if you celebrate. Mars enters Sagittarius. So for those few days, Mars will be Gandanta, first of all, moving from a water sign of Scorpio to a fire sign of Sagittarius. Mars will be Gandanta, so just be careful there. And with Venus in Scorpio. And so I mentioned that I had things to say about Venus and Scorpio, and that is that at least, okay, so I have to give this caveat with the fact that I am 29. I'm married to somebody who is 7 years older than me, so most of my peer group is like in their 30s, right? Okay, so the reason I bring that up is that I am at the age where a lot of my peer group, if they aren't already married, they are soon hoping to get married. And some of them are, divorced already, and that's fine. That's cool. But I'm just saying this is my worldview, right? That's why I bring that up, is because maybe this is because of the phase I am in life. And so that might be making my perception this way, because I see on social media every year for the past several years since I've been in my 20s, people get engaged around the holidays. It's very common. And I got engaged on New Year's, right? And several years ago. And I also see there is a little bit of stankiness from people who don't get engaged, who were hoping to. And so getting engaged is a very Venus in Capricorn energy, because Capricorn is about structure and taking things to the next level. And Venus is all about relationships and romance, and also finances and abundance. So getting engaged and saying, we're going to add this next layer of structure to our relationship, and then ideally, usually a marriage signifies some form of joint finances, is a very Venus and Capricorn thing. And so Venus in Scorpio is just a little bit of a different energy. So I say that if you are one of the people that's hoping for a ring on Christmas Eve or New Year's or whatever, just know that the energy of that is a little more supportive around Valentine's Day when Venus does move into Capricorn. But I also, I didn't want to waste your time talking about that if you're in another phase of life and you're absolutely not hoping for a ring, right? I'm already married. I know people that are recently divorced. I know people listen to this podcast that are, in their 50s or 60s and whatever. So I recognize that everybody here is in a different phase of life, but I just hope that example helps illustrate the energy that I'm going after. And so Venus in Scorpio with a Gandanta Mars around Christmas Eve to, right here at the last week of December, it's just a passion will be very high, and it's also a time that's ripe for emotional connection. So just the shadow side of that you have to look out for is expecting the energy to be anything different, first of all, than what it is. And second of all, making sure you incorporate that compassion part that I was mentioning earlier, that don't just let your passion get away with you. Make sure you're having compassion for yourself and for those around you, and to maybe choose your battles wisely. Don't get in any fights over beliefs, which actually will kind of get more, that energy will get heightened when Mars moves to Sagittarius, right? Which is on the 27th. So still that last week in December, that's kind of the energy going on, if that makes sense. So this is a good month for socializing and making meaningful connections because of the Sagittarius energy, and the Mercury retrograde energy actually, because of it being mostly in Sagittarius, And Scorpio also, and with the Venus and Scorpio energy around the same time that Mercury retrogrades back to Sagittarius, it's like, if you're going to make connections during that time, maybe you focus on deepening connections or making connections in a meaningful way, connections with other people, relationships, right? So it's a good month for that because of those energies. It's also a good month for laying plans to broaden your horizon, especially towards the end of the month, taking action that'll get you there. But that taking action piece takes off a little bit more in January, which is why I was like, we want to do the yearly planning party around this new moon would be a good time to do it. But that was a tough decision, honestly, to push it back. I was like, I just want to do it, but I would rather more of you have the planner in your hands, because the exercises that we'll do in the yearly planning party, and these are largely the same exercises we've done in years past, but I do these exercises every year myself because they work, and that's what keeps you on track with your vision and helps you turn that vision into meaningful progress. So instead, around that new moon in Scorpio, we will be focusing on more of that deep emotional work that I mentioned, to kind of, this gets into like some stuff that I've got to mention in a moment about what it's a good month for, is like, like you don't want to just get to work, like get going, get to taking action without making sure that that action is aligned and exploring. So this is a lot of what we'll explore in the Mercury retrograde challenge, is how your, the meditation challenge that we do every Mercury retrograde in the membership, exploring in the guided activities that I'll offer you within that challenge, how your emotions and how your emotions impact your nervous system. This is a very Mercury Scorpio thing, right? And then in turn, to bring in the Sagittarius piece, how your emotions and nervous system are driving your behavior, and if that feels aligned with your vision. That's what we'll be exploring throughout the Mercury retrograde meditation challenge. So I think that will serve just as well to work with these energies in your life, and then we'll do the planning activities and the 2024 astrological rundown when you have your planners in your hands. So if you want to get one, FYI, if you're not in the membership, and I can't believe I didn't say this earlier, you go to yogiscopes.com/2024, like 2024. It'll redirect you to the print-on-demand company that I'm using called Book Patch. So when you see it redirects you to not a Yogiscope site, that's intentional. It's not spam. I'm using the Book Patch. You can also go find the bookpatch.com website and just search Yogiscopes on there. It'll take you to the planner where you can buy a weekly one to get shipped directly to you through this shipping company. It'll be faster that way. But also if I showed up in your Spotify Wrapped, or if you send me, tag me, email me, whatever, a screenshot of a review on Apple Podcasts, then I will send you a planner. So you need to do that in the next week or so if you want to have the planner in your hands on time. So let's keep rolling. It's also a good time while Mercury is retrograde in Sagittarius to revisit your educational goals and be open to revisiting your philosophical, I can't talk today, Mercury retrograde shadow period. I always stumble over my words worse in Mercury retrograde and the shadow period. So anyway, revisiting your philosophical or spiritual views, making sure that your dogma that you're aligning yourself with, which is something I touched on a lot in that interview with Amber that I mentioned earlier on the Astro Coaching podcast. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts and listen to it. I touched on that, but reflecting on how your philosophical views or your dogma are serving your vision in life, because that's the whole thing, is philosophy and spiritual practices like this are, in my opinion, a lot of times they get conflated with if you can just be the most perfect at that dogma or that philosophy or whatever, then that's like the goal. But in my opinion, no, it doesn't matter. You can mess up the rules a little bit as long as it's serving you making the world a better place and being kinder to yourself and others. That's something I feel strongly about. Anyway, this Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius might bring up some of that. And just a time to reflect on how that's showing up in your life. It's also a time to reflect this entire month on how your emotions and nervous system drive your behavior. And that's related to the Mercury retrograde thing I was talking about with the Mars and Scorpio and Mercury energies being heightened this month. And so it's also a good time, especially with this Scorpio, Venus and Scorpio energy and all that stuff, to reassess joint finances and investments and be mindful of uncovering hidden truths and being sensitive about it, especially with that Venus energy. Just have some compassion, be sensitive, right? And then it's a good time for renewed growth and expansion in self-identity and initiatives. And that comes with the Jupiter direct in Aries, which is at the end of the month. So it's like if you do all this inner work all month to reflect on your views, your philosophies, what you're aligning yourself with, if that is leading to the right vision you want in your life, and then reflect on how your emotions are driving your nervous system, which is then probably driving your behavior, and if that's taking you closer to or further away from your vision. And the journal prompts in a moment should help with that. And so it's a bad month for, and so just to finish that thought, to do all that this month so that when Jupiter goes direct in Aries at the end of the month and Mercury goes direct in Scorpio also at the end of the month, in January will be the time to start taking action towards that. So you want to align your action in December, align your thoughts, align your insides with your outsides, so that when you step forward into 2024, you're more intentional and not just doing stuff just to do it. You're really being more intentional then. So it's a bad month for taking relationships to a higher level of structure without examining that deep emotional connection. So that's what the Venus in Scorpio is all about, that deep emotional connection in relationships and finances, right? How your money behaviors and how your emotions are driving that, right? And it's a bad month for fighting over beliefs or making moves without doing the introspection first. So your yoga practices are to meditate every day during Mercury retrograde. That is my challenge to you now and always. You can join us for a guided version. It's super fun, a lot of good accountability and community support in the membership, which I say that, and the membership's not actually open for enrollment right this second, but it will be like next week. I'll reopen it. I had to kind of settle after the enrollment period in November with several of you being grandfathered into the new one-on-one tier and the new lower tier, which was part of the Black Friday bundle, where you can get just weekly sign-by-signs. Anyway, the official details, I had to kind of let that dust settle. It was a lot, and getting the planner out. So you can sign up for the membership. I'll send it. You got to get my emails because that's where I send this kind of stuff. And then it's also important to journal about your vision before setting goals for the new year. And so I would just say in this month, if you can just be reflecting in your yoga practice, whatever kind of yoga practice you do, whether it's, I've started going to hot yoga again. So shouts to my peeps that I see. If you see me at Hot Yoga Asheville, say what's up, because that's been like my home studio since way back. And I kind of stopped going during the pandemic and having kids and stuff. And I'm officially back, and I set foot in the door and got a big hug from an old friend, and that was awesome. So say what up if you see me there. So I go to hot yoga. Some of you might not do that. That's intense, right? So you might do restorative, whatever kind of yoga you do, whatever kind of practice you have, whether that's at a studio or at home or whatever. Can you just explore in your own awareness and in your meditation practice, if you have one or if you don't have one, that's what the challenge is designed for, how your emotions are impacting your physiology and your nervous system. What is the relationship there? It's a question to explore in your practice all month. And then maybe also reflect on how that's driving your behavior. So here's your journal prompts. As you reflect on the past year, were there any significant transformations in your life this year? And how have those changes shaped your emotional depth and personal growth? And what aspects of your life do you feel like you're still in the process of transformation? And how can you support and become more intentional about that transformation or changes that you're seeking or going through right now? So that was a big one. We'll explore that more on the new moon in Scorpio episode next week, as well as in the yearly planning event. We'll explore it more actionably and more in depth. And so next question is, what beliefs or long-held philosophies have I either left unquestioned or perhaps reconsidered this year? How has my perspective on life, learning, and spirituality evolved? And in what areas do I still seek greater understanding or knowledge? And then last question, how do I balance my need for intellectual stimulation with effective communication with others? So we'll also explore that more in depth on the full moon in Gemini episode in a couple weeks from now. So reflecting on any conversations or interactions you have, what have you learned about your communication style and how can you improve it going forward, especially in that Mercury retrograde time? So yeah, just a quick, that's your journal prompts, your yoga practices, quick recap of the housekeeping announcements. If I made it into your Spotify Wrapped, or if you don't use Spotify, you could alternatively write me a review on Apple, like actually write something and tag me in it on social media, and I will send you a gift. And that gift I mentioned will be a copy of the planner. If you already have, I think I forgot to mention this earlier, whoops. If you already have the planner for whatever reason, we'll think of something else. And that's going to depend on where you are and what you need, but it'll be good. I promise. And then be on my email list to hear about the Mercury retrograde challenge and the membership re-enrollment if you're interested in that, and when the yearly planning party will be rescheduled too. And you can go to yogiscopes.com/2024 to get your hands on a planner. So thanks for being here. I hope December is a wonderful, beautiful, extravagant month for you, and I hope you keep on doing the inner work. Until next time, please keep your feet on the ground, your head in the stars, and stay in the light. Take care, friends.